Are we rolling?
We're rolling.
I'm going to, should I stand up? I guess I should stand up. They don't have a podium in here, but I'll make it work. Am I still in the frame?
Oh, you got so much.
Hi, I'm Jamie Davis. I want to welcome you to our session on tips and hints for newly published or soon-to-be published authors. So there's people in here. There's a no shame moment coming up, so get ready. How many people in here have not published anything yet? Raise your hand. Anybody in here published just one book or just a few books? All right, great. So I said it earlier to the people that were here early. Every author, whether they are Martha Carr, Anderly Craig, Martell, fill in the blank, great author here, they all started on book one with a blank page. All right, nobody starts and comes into the author business with 100 books under their belt. Okay, so we all started writing at the same place. So I want you to understand that we're going to talk a lot about some kind of concepts about getting our book started, and we'll move on into maybe answering some specific questions that people have. And I'm very reachable and approachable in the group. So after the fact, people can check in with me, and we can continue the conversation, or I can point you to some resources that'll be a good fit for you. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Jamie Davis. I'm an author and a retired nurse and paramedic. I started writing about 2014. Somebody dared me to write some of the craziest ideas I had in my head down, and they told me about this thing called Nanowrimo. And I was like, okay, what's that? Well, you have to write 50,000 words per book in 1 month. And I was a blogger at the time, and I was like, well, okay, 50,000 words, I can do that. I can write that much. But it wasn't just blog articles about medical stuff. It was me writing a story, and became a much different hurdle to hit. But I did it. I don't know how. I just sat down and just spewed words on the page, and I didn't care. But I was determined to have some formation of a story at the end of the month of November in 2014 that would be that book. And that's where I started. I now have 31 books published. If you go online, you'll see more because there's a lot of box sets built in on top of that. But I have 31 books published. My Hallmark series is about a paramedic who treats supernatural creatures. So you can bring your crazy workplace into your story and your own unique skill set into the characters you write. So let's see, I published that first book in 2015. I'm one of those weird people who said, the heck with it, I'm going to publish the first book I wrote. And people liked it, but it was not a pretty book. And it had a horrible cliffhanger at the ending. The first 3 books in that series are really one book. But I didn't know any better. So, and it did okay. People liked it. And since I had the second book coming along pretty quickly, they were happy to jump right in. So there is no perfect book. And the lesson from me to you is to just get your stuff out there. But the other lesson is I made just a ton of mistakes along the way. And that's okay. It's not about the falling down, it's about the getting up, right? You've probably heard some version of that before. We just have to get back on the horse, or whatever the fill-in metaphor here. So we're going to cover today what to think about before you publish, what to think about who you'll publish for, your reader, where you want to publish, and then we'll talk a little bit about the specifics of the publishing dashboard and things that you can think about when you're ready to actually publish your book. So there's some things to think about before you publish. One of them, there are 4 different things that I came up with for this, and one of them is financial planning. If you're going to do this as an author and have your author business, there are some financial ducks you need to get in a row. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax attorney, I don't know anything about the IRS. If you ask my wife, she'll say I can't do numbers to save my life. She spends several long weekends in January and February fixing what I did over the course of the year. Okay, so, but my advice to you is get a good bookkeeper or tax accountant or seek some professional advice about just the very basics of what you need to have a business. A lot of times that's just having a separate bank account and starting up yourself as a sole proprietorship just by having something simple as that. Because what will happen is when you log into KDP, Kobo, Drafted Digital, any of these places are going to want a bank account to link to so they can send you money, right? And it's always been told to me that it's not a good idea to use your personal account and mix personal and business finances because the IRS will want to see something separate. And in your country, if you're not in the US, you have probably a similar version of that. So seek professional advice, get your ducks in a row ahead of time when you're ready to open because they will ask for a bank account so that they can send you money. And that's the cool part. They don't want it for any other reason than they want to pay you. So you'll just need to have that set up first. You want to do some genre research. I didn't know what urban fantasy was. Really. I didn't know it was called urban fantasy. And the lesson there is a lot of readers don't know it's called urban fantasy either, or insert your genre here. I write space opera. So your characters sing. And I think that's we just need to remember we're not our readers. We know a lot of the insider stuff about what we do in the author business, even at your stage in the game. You know a lot of insider knowledge about the author business. People don't know genre. They might know science fiction, fantasy, thriller, romance. And they know they read books that fit in those general broad categories. Beyond that, they don't know sweet romance from steamy romance. Well, they'll learn fast enough. But they just know they like romance of a certain type. And that's what they look for. And they identify that in certain ways. So do your genre research. What do covers, the top-selling covers in your genre look like? You should strive to have a cover that looks kind of like the genre you're aiming for. Okay? And that's simple. You can go on any of the book sites. You can look at the New York Times bestseller list for different things. You can look on Amazon's list of genres and just kind of look down and see what looks like the books you might like to write. What do you like to read? What is it about a cover that grabs you? And kind of pull all that information together in your genre research. What are some of the common things you see in your genre? In urban fantasy, it's all about the hidden world, right? If you read urban fantasy, there's these hidden creatures that live in the real world that most humans never see. And yours is the character that stumbles upon it, or somehow gets dragged into it. That's like a big overarching trope for urban fantasy. What's the trope in your fantasy? What are some of the key things that your readers are going to look for to match up to the books they like to read? So those are some things. How do you do that? Read. There's no substitute for understanding the genre you're writing in. I read fantasy and sci-fi since I was old enough to pick up a book. I've probably read 1,000 books in the fantasy and sci-fi genre of various types. I settled on urban fantasy because I was writing about paramedics and they live in modern times in urban environments, and that's what urban fantasy was for me. But I had to read some books after I released those first couple of books and realized that I'd missed the mark on a few things and kind of fixed that in subsequent parts of that series. So it's a learning process for everybody. So do the genre research. That's really super important. And you'll save yourself a lot of headaches if you kind of got your ducks in a row in that sense up front. Does it mean, oh no, I have to change my book? No. Maybe what you thought your genre was isn't the genre. Maybe you're writing something slightly in a different niche of the marketplace. So that might just be, okay, I need to find out what books are like my book. So don't stop writing, don't scrap what you're doing. People have a common misconception about what right to market is. It's really just about understanding the book you're writing and where it fits in the marketplace. Not necessarily about writing something that is the marketplace. Okay, I'm a big believer in writing the story that's in you, especially that first story. You know, you're here, a lot of you are here because you have that story burning to get out of you. And it may not fit perfectly in a genre. That's okay, get it out. And then learn, maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't fit. Maybe you're the guy that starts a whole new genre. And that happens. You're the one that lightning doesn't strike very often, but it does. And maybe you'll be that person. But just get it outside. Now learn what didn't work and what worked, and maybe make some tweaks in how you approach the characters the next time. That could be something you do. Building a reader base. Do you need to have a book out to start your list? How many people think you need to have your book out to start your list? How many people think you can start your list right away? My biggest mistake was I didn't start my reader list right away in the beginning. Okay, and that's a common mistake. There are things, we talked earlier with somebody about sending excerpts of what you're writing. We're writing that short story that's the origin of your main character. And maybe it's only 2,500 words. But getting that into BookFunnel or Story Origin or some way of putting it into a reader's hands and getting their email address. And having that thing that tells them a little bit about your reading and what they can expect from you. And then if they stay on your list, you've started to gather a list. Launching to a list of 10 or 12 or 15 people is better than launching to no list at all. And I know people out there that have built lists of several hundred people before their book comes out. Just by writing, sending out a couple of excerpts from their story and making it available on a regular basis and building their list that way. So there are ways to build your list. You can reach out to other authors in your genre that you're going to release in and say, hey, I'm a brand new author. I'm going to release on X date in a couple of months. I was wondering if you might be able to help me out and share the upcoming release with your list. And here's a link where they can get an excerpt of the book, and it will collect an email address. You should tell them that. Not everybody will say yes. No one will scream at you and say, my God, how dare you ask. They will just say no, or they'll say yes. A few of them will. I'm very open about helping out people. I might ask to read some of what you're writing, just because I want to make sure it's a good fit for my readers. But if it is, I will say, hey, this is for some brand new stuff you might want to check out. Book's coming out in a couple of months. So you got to ask. We're here to lift each other up, okay? And I promise you, there will come a time, grasshopper, for those of you to get that reference. There will come a time when someone will come to you and say, hey, would you share this with your list? I'm brand new, I'm just getting started. And you'll remember, oh, that's right, I once sat down in front of a blank page for the first time too. So that's important. And then you need to think about, before you publish, whether you want to publish wide or publish into Kindle Unlimited. I'm not going to have a huge whole discussion about that. That's right now, I think it's more of a gut check thing than anything else. Some people are very uncomfortable having all their eggs in one basket. Other people love the fact that basket seems to hold unlimited numbers of eggs. So you have to feel your comfort level out with that. The other marketplaces are great. About a third of my books are wide. I still release some of my series wide. And so there are ways to do that. There's a great Facebook group called Wide for the Win that Mark Leslie Lefebvre runs. And there's some great content in there, and there's always people willing to help. So if you want to launch into Kobo, Google, Nook, Apple, or any of the other multitude of places like libraries out there, there's a good place for you to get started. But understand which direction you want to go with that. Do you want to release in all the places? Maybe you're like, I don't want to have to hassle with releasing these 7 different places and updating my book in 7 different places, and that is a pain in the neck to do that. You can go through that draft to digital, or any of the other aggregators, or a few others out there that'll release your book in multiple places, and then they'll just take a 10% cut to kind of aggregate everything for you and pay you one royalty at the end of the month. So there are ways to do that. Okay? Do you have a question?
On the ISBN situation, do you have any words of advice?
Yes, I do. Actually, I think that's on the next slide. Let me
Oh,
look.
okay, sorry.
Ding, 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 winner. I'll jump ahead to that. So ISBN, you don't have to have an ISBN for any ebook release anywhere. The ebooks don't have to have ISBNs, they can have ISBNs. It's kind of an if you want to have an ISBN. You don't even need to have an ebook ISBN to release to copyright with the US Copyright Office. You just have to send them a copy of your book and pay the fee, and they'll copyright it for you. There's a whole process to go through on their website, but they kind of walk you through it, so if you need to do that. But no, ISBNs are something, let me go down to the specific spot. ISBNs are, I'm trying to find the slide with ISBNs on it so I can actually tell you what ISBN stands for. Does anybody care what ISBN stands for? No. It's like International Book Serial Number. It's something of that nature.
International Standard Book Number.
Thank you. Thank you. So ISBN is something you can purchase in the United States, or in other countries they actually will give their citizens ISBNs for free, so yay Canada. I'm envious of that. In the United States, if you were to purchase ISBNs, you can purchase, it's a silly system, but it's like you can purchase one ISBN for like $100, or you can purchase 100 ISBNs for like $200 or $300. And you kind of look at that and scratch your head and go, well, I'm going to write more than one book. And probably, I can't imagine writing 100 books. I went ahead and bought 100 because I figured I'd use them. And you can use them on, so here's the thing, ISBNs, once you purchase them, they can be used for any book in any format. In fact, every different format of your book has to have a different ISBN if you're going to use it, okay? If you can also go through Amazon and they'll just assign an ISBN of their own to your book, and they become the publisher of that paperback. In ebooks, they just assign it an internal Amazon serial number called an ASIN. Okay, that's an internal Amazon serial number that'll assign your book. And the other book sellers do the same thing for that interior serial number for the ebooks. So you don't have to have an ISBN, you don't have to buy an ISBN if you don't want to. But if you want to be the publisher of record for your paperbacks and things like that here in the US, you might want to consider getting ISBNs, and then you just basically go into a dashboard and assign it to a book with a title, with a brief description, and that kind of stuff. And it'll go through that with you. Let me go back up since we were talking about ISBNs. So you're ready to, so you're pretty much ready to publish. You got your book done. What's next? What is there still to do before you hit the publish button? Has anyone here ever looked at the Kdp Dashboard to see what it looks like to publish a book? Like you've gone in there and looked at the form you have to fill out? It can catch you by surprise. There's a title you need to fill in. There's also a spot for a subtitle, which is optional, but you know there's lots of people talking about whether you should use a subtitle or not use a subtitle. A lot of people will put in like book 2 in the X series in the subtitle area. Other people will put this is book 2 in an urban fantasy thriller in the subtitle. So they put keywords in there. I would suggest checking out Dave Chesson's presentation. I think it was on Tuesday in the event center. So it's all recorded and available for you to get on the Facebook page. So look up Dave Chesson. He does a great talk about keywords, and I think he probably had addressed putting keywords in your subtitle. So that's something to consider. Description of your book is also something you need to have done before you go in there to start publishing. I didn't, I just went in and, I'm going to publish this book. And I went in there and I was like, title. Okay, I got the title down. Subtitle, I don't know what the subtitle is going to be. I left it blank the first time. You can go back and add a subtitle. You can go back and change your subtitle. So that's something that you can do. But the description, I just wrote a book about a paramedic who treats supernatural creatures, and that was it. That was my big description. What I've learned since is that it's a lot more copywriting involved in writing a description. But you should have some version of your description ready to go that you can cut and paste in there. Okay? That'll change. I've changed my description I don't know how many times. Updating it, trying different things. So when you get to your description, understand that this is another something that you can change and update as time goes by. Descriptions need to change because the readers change. So what I wrote 5 years ago might not be a good description now. And I need to change it and update it. So I might, again, do that genre research. What do descriptions look like among the best sellers in my genre? Read a few of them. You might see that they have a cadence to them. And a way that they kind of list the characters and what's going on in the scene. It's not just a synopsis, though. It's really there to hook the reader.
Is that where the blurb goes?
The blurb. That's the blurb. The description / blurb. That's a synonymous thing. So blurb and description are the same thing. You also will have space to put in keywords / phrases. So I have like paramedic series is what I'm doing. I have urban fantasy male main character is the keyword. So when they say keyword, they really mean key phrase. So you should kind of do some research. Again, Dave Chesson's site is a great talk on how to find keywords and how to look them up. And that's also something you can change and adjust over time. That's basically how you show up in the search engine on Amazon or any of the other booksellers, is putting those keywords in there. And then somebody enters them. So hopefully you're putting in something people are searching for in your keywords. And then you want to know your price point. And this comes back to that genre research. What are the books in your genre selling for? You might be in a genre where all the books are $2.99, but you were thinking you'd sell for $3.99. There's nothing wrong with setting your price wherever. Test it and see. You might find that your book sells just fine, a little more than the average for your marketplace. But you should have an idea of where that marketplace falls from a pricing standpoint. Again, look at the top 10, top 20, top 30 books in your genre and see where the price points are. And do that over several days, because you hate to be looking at the day everybody's running a sale. So check back maybe a week later and check the same books again and see if they're all 99 cents. Come back a week or two later and see if they're still all 99 cents, because it's probably a lot of them are running sales. Okay. So what else do we want to talk about? To get started, you've got a book and you've got these things you have to keep track of in the beginning to get started and to actually publish. But I'm really more curious about what people in here want to actually hear me talk about. So I've kind of gone through an overview of some key things you need to know before you publish and have written down or understand before you publish. And so the next thing is, I can't really walk you through how to actually go through the Kdp Dashboard, but I can talk a little bit about what to do right afterwards. Your book's going to come out, it's going to launch, it's going to have that 30-day period where Amazon will give it a little juice because it's a new book, and they'll see if people catch on to it. But then your book's going to kind of fall off in the standings from where it started. And I want to tell you that something I've learned recently is that we shouldn't be tracking the peaks of our books, we should be tracking the valleys of our books. And that's something Joel Solari, who's the business consultant for authors, started talking a lot about. And it makes so much more sense, because if you track the peaks of your books, you're going to get really depressed when it starts to fall. Because it can't stay at number 500 forever. It's just impossible. So I think it makes a whole lot more sense to track your valley. How far off does your book fall before it settles out in a number? And then your goal is to build your readership so that the next book you launch has a slightly higher peak and then a slightly higher valley. So your valley is a little higher the next one and a little higher the next one. So I would urge you to just not focus on the peaks. The peaks are great, man. If your book's got a bestseller tag and you're just on the top of the world, but it's a fleeting thing. I've had a bestseller tag show up and it was gone before I could show it to my wife. So now I screen capture everything because I have to prove that it happened. Go ahead.
If we're fortunate enough to figure out someone who might speak for us on the cover, this was the best thing I've ever read. How would we put that up there? Or is it how?
So,
would there be a space for it, or how does that work?
I don't necessarily have to put it on the cover, although you could talk to your cover designer about how they might put a small blurb on the cover.
Of course.
A small piece of a snippet, but I have seen it in the blurb. So I have seen it something like, quote, if you love this type of book, you're going to absolutely rave about this type of book, this particular book, and end quote, and who said it. So I have seen that in people's blurbs, and it's a great way to catch people's eye because obviously, while I do love that kind of book, so maybe I will like this particular book. It's a great way to hook the reader. So if you have somebody that's read your book, that's a name that said something like that, and you can pull that little snippet of what they said in the review out, that's great. And there's actually a place to do that in the blurb, and then you can also add to it in the editorial reviews. There's a section for editorial reviews as well. So there's a way to add that as well in the dashboard. Yes, I'll get to you in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You mentioned copyright. Should every book we put up be copyrighted?
So I'm not a copyright attorney. I did not copyright any of my books until very recently. And the reason I'm doing it now is because I've had someone approach me about doing something, making a series out of it. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere because like 99.999% of all people who get told we want to make your book into a series never see the light of day in a TV screen. So that just doesn't happen. But I was like, I better have the copyright done on this because official copyright in the United States copyright law is something you need to have if someone copies your stuff. In other words, my understanding is, and I'm not a lawyer, my understanding is you can't collect damages against copyright if your book's not copyrighted. It's not copyrighted at the Copyright Office. Yes?
Can I clarify that a bit? You own the copyright on whatever you create as soon as it's in tangible form. But in the United States, you cannot defend that in a court of law if it's not registered with the Copyright Office. So you can put in your book, this is copyright owned by you and the date, and it's yours, and nobody has the right to steal it. But somebody will steal it, and if you want to fight that in court, you better have it registered ahead of time.
Right. But I don't, so your copyright exists as soon as you write it. But to defend it, you would have to have it officially copyrighted here in the United States at least.
Which you could do if you needed to,
Which
right?
you can do.
Yeah.
It
would be retroactive.
It's like and you can do it retroactively.
Yeah.
So that's what I've done. I had my assistant, I gave her a list and all the PDFs for the books and said, go to it. And they're like $40, I think it's $45 a piece. Don't quote me on that, it might have gone up slightly. But something like that, $45 a piece to copyright with the US Copyright Office. Let's go here first and I'll come back there.
There should be video available. There were some sessions done by Maggie Marr,
There were.
who is an attorney, and she references some of that information and gives.
Great, yeah. As usual, there's awesome resources in the 20Books video library, so look up that for an actual person who knows what they're talking about. So that's great. Yes, back here.
So you said there were 5 things you needed to do to you said number 4 was how to publish, and then you went on to Isbn. You never actually said what number 5 was. Or
So,
was Isbn
5
number
things
5?
are, and pricing points.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so pricing points is number 5.
More techie stuff. So you have to have certain formats. Let's assume we're just gonna stick it up on Amazon first. How much time would you think that we should budget?
Budget for what?
For formatting our manuscript to
So there's a couple of things you can do. If you know somebody who has a Mac and they have the program Vellum, they might be willing to format it for you. It would literally, if you send them a Word document with chapters split out in your book, it would take them, they can format a basic version of an EPUB very quickly. If they have they need a Word document of your story, broken out into chapters, and with the chapter headings appropriate, like chapter 1, whatever, and then your cover, and they can make your book in Vellum within a couple of minutes, pretty quickly.
Vellum is incredible.
But it's not something I would recommend necessarily you buy as a brand new author. There's also Atticus, which is brand new from Dave Chesson that he came out with. That's both a writing platform as well as a formatting platform. So that's another one you have to pay for. It is a paid platform, but that's something you can use too to format, and that's system agnostic. It's actually a web-based system, so that's something you can use. You can also hire formatters. There are formatters out there who will use like Adobe InDesign to create, if you want to have some fancier graphics in your chapter headings or things like that. You can find people that'll do formatting for you. I don't know what the price point is for that, but it's not super expensive. And you just need to basically get on somebody's schedule to do that. So how long it will take will depend upon how long it is. Sean, do you have something to add?
Well, there's also Drafted Digital and Readseed, which are free, and they have about a 2-minute learning curve. I am a very non-tech person, and I figured out how to do it in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think anybody else can do it in 2 minutes.
Drafted Digital and Readseed was what he said. They have a free part of their platform that allows you to format books. I've forgotten all about that.
And the only other thing is, if you pay somebody to do it for you, every time you make a change in your book, you've got to go back to them and ask them, and they're going to charge you. So every time you want to add a new book to your series in the back matter, they're going to have to go through and reformat it for you. So if you can learn how to do it yourself for free, or with Atticus, or it's so much better, and it's really not hard. I can do it. So anyway.
And I know Sean, so if he's, you can do it anybody.
He's not that smart.
So, great. Right over here.
Copyright lawyer, one of the things I haven't heard of is what is the beginning author? When do I get the lawyers involved? What kind of lawyer do I need? Where do I find one?
I don't have a lot to offer to that, other than to say there are some great intellectual property lawyers out there. I have one that I use. There's one that presented here at the event. I think there were several in attendance here at the event who are intellectual property lawyers. There's a great online blog written by an intellectual property lawyer named Catherine Goldman, and it's called The Creative Law Center. And she has some great blog posts just on general copyright issues. If she sees something interesting in the news, like somebody copied a famous painting and got sued for it, she will write something about it. So it's a great resource there. Thanks.
I'm an intellectual property paralegal, and you really don't need a lawyer unless you have a boatload of books. And as someone mentioned, the minute you publish your book or put it in a written form, it's copyrighted. And again, the copyright registration is simply so you can go to court. But I think, and we may be missing this here, when you may need an attorney is when you have assets, which are intellectual property. And then you want to make sure that you are putting that in a will or a trust and you're protecting it that way. And everyone here who has written a book has found it on one of the sites where somebody's stolen it and they're charging for the PDF. That's going to happen, and you can fight that if you want, but litigation is expensive. So if you can avoid that and protect it every other way, go that route first. And there are so many resources in 20Books and online. So look at that first. And if you get caught up in the medical terminology, then throw something up on 20Books. A lot of people
and actually just search for intellectual property rights or something like that on 20Books. This, with 50,000 members, I would be willing to bet no one's come up with an original question in the last year. As an admin, I can tell you, the stuff's there, and we just generally, when we get a question that's come up before, we just point you to the commonly listed questions document that we have attached to the group. So, but that's a great point, Bakes, thank you. And I will say this about just pirating. My personal view of pirating is, if someone's gonna go to the trouble of finding a pirate site to download your free book, they were never gonna buy your book to begin with. And there are plenty of people who are happy to spend their money on your book. So unless you have a rampant problem with pirating, it's like playing whack-a-mole. And you just can never win. So my personal view is I just don't even look unless somebody tells me something very specific, and then I send a takedown notice. Like somebody's got an audiobook of mine on YouTube or something. But otherwise I ignore it, because otherwise I drive myself nuts. I never get any writing done. Yes, sir?
You mentioned for people who are still writing their first book, they should already be working on a list. What else should I be working on?
The list is the biggest thing. I mean, I think when I was doing the author interviews for my podcast, one of the biggest things I would say is like, what do you wish you'd done first? And I would say 90% of them said list. And I just think you can never start building your list too soon. You can never start building that fan base too soon. And if someone's willing to follow you based on a chapter you sent them, how much they're gonna love the whole book. So you're finding rabid fans early, and they're the kind of people you want to have in your list. So I think list is really the biggest thing. Other stuff is you're already here. So I mean, give yourself a round of applause. I think everything else is you're in this room, you're at this conference. So you've already taken a bigger step than most beginning authors never do, is come to an event like this and take the time to learn what they need to learn. But list is just, I think, number one. You can't sell a book to the air. Amazon will help some. Somebody will stumble upon your book page and say, this looks cute, I'll buy it. But if you have a list, it'll give it some juice. So that's really the biggest thing. Any other questions that we have? Yes?
Speaking of the list, a lot of the sessions mentioned getting the list going and then getting advanced readers and putting your book up in such a way that you price it very high so it's not actually going to be purchased, but people can leave reviews on it. So
you can format, so the trick, what she's talking about is how to get books reviews up on a book that isn't for sale yet. Artificially. The way you do it is you format your print book first, and upload a print book and cover and go through the process with the print book. And you actually, then you can direct your reviewers to leave the review on the print book. Then when your ebook launches, you tie the print book to the ebook in the Kdp Dashboard. It often happens automatically because it has the same title, same subtitle, same blurb. Amazon just after a day or so notices it. But you can also go through the Kdp Dashboard and call or email them and give them the ISBN for the paperback and the ASIN for the ebook, and say these two books are the same book. Can you please join them in the dashboard? And it will do that. But it almost always does it automatically because they're actually linked in your Kdp Dashboard. Like right below your ebook is your paperback book. And they now have hardcover books. So they're all linked together in the dashboard. That's why Amazon pretty much figures out pretty quickly on the store that this goes with this. And when that happens, then all the reviews come over. So you can have reviews show up pretty quickly right away on the first day or two, because you've already got reviews on the paperback, so when the ebook launches.
Does that work the same when you purchase reviews through, Booksprouts? Somebody was mentioning you get like 50 reviews for $20 and they read your book.
I'm not super familiar with Booksprout. I think I think what they do is hire, somebody familiar with John?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so Booksprout, you're not actually buying reviews, you're buying access, because that's illegal through Amazon's TOS, but you're buying access to reviewers. So for whatever price, they'll send your book out to X number of reviewers. And on a site like Booksprout, they have to be able to verify with Booksprout that they have actually left reviews at a certain percentage or they get kicked out as advanced readers. So what you're paying for is just the chance for Booksprout to deliver your ebook to a reviewer, and you're gonna get a certain amount of reviews out of that. But that usually comes a little bit later. What we were talking about is trying to get a lot of reviews on the launch day. And the way to do that is make your paperback live. What they're saying is, I put my paperback out, but I don't want anybody to buy it, so I price it at $199. And then, but they can go in and leave their review on that, and then, they'll join together on the first day and they'll migrate. So on the first day or two, you've got a bunch of reviews in. But Booksprout reviewers usually come a little bit after that.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Sean, I appreciate that. Yes?
If you do that, when you do kind of the silent paperback launch, what does that do to your 30-day play?
It actually, from what I can tell, from what I've seen and from what I've heard from folks, doesn't do too much. Now, you're gonna put the paperback out there for like months ahead of time. We're talking about putting your paperback out there like a week ahead of time. And it doesn't seem to have that great of an effect because they're two different products. So Amazon sees a paperback book and an ebook, even though they're the same book, they're two different products in Amazon's eyes. And from what I can tell, Amazon starts the 30-day cliff on the paperback on day one, but doesn't start the 30-day cliff on the ebook until it comes out. That's now subject to nobody really knows what the heck Amazon's doing at any given time. So the 30-day cliff is a myth. Amazon will never confirm it. It's just something we've all kind of noticed, that there's a 30 and a 90-day cliff where they stop pumping your book through their system. Next. Yes?
So if I were to do Kindle Unlimited, that doesn't come with having the paperback?
That doesn't come with a paperback?
Conflict.
Conflict. No. So, Kindle Unlimited, the terms for Kindle Unlimited are you cannot sell your paperback book on any other platform, or not your ebook on any other platform. It does not include any other format. You can go wide with audio, you can go wide with your paperbacks, so you can go to Ingramspark and get your paperbacks out in libraries and bookstores. You can create a paperback on Amazon and also create a paperback on the Barnes & Noble store. Okay? If an ISBN note, as long as it's the same trim size, which is in other words, like it's the 9x13 book on cream colored paper with black and white, then it would have the same ISBN no matter which store you sold it on, if you own the ISBN. If you don't, then Barnes & Noble will make their own ISBN for you for free, and it will be different from the Amazon ISBN, and that's okay too. But if you want to own your own ISBN, ISBN goes with the specific format, and that includes if you change the paper color, which is fun to me. But anyway, so that trim size goes. So if you want to make a large print book, you need a different ISBN if you're owning your own ISBNs. Again, Amazon and Barnes & Noble will give you free ISBNs if you want them. They do whatever they can to make it easy for you to publish and get your
So in regard to that, what's the advantage of owning your own ISBN versus going with the free?
I think it has to do with the publisher of record. So Amazon will be the publisher of record for the book in their ISBN, even though you own the copyright. Okay, that doesn't affect your copyright ownership, and they don't own the intellectual property. They're just listed as the publisher of record for that particular book in that format, particular format. It just has to do with who's the publisher of record, and so that can be tricky, I think, when it comes to IP rights down the road for certain things. But honestly, I don't think it matters to a large extent, because you can always later get your own ISBNs and create different formats of book. I have ISBNs, so if you go through Ingramspark, you will need to buy your own ISBNs and have them there for that. So I have 9x13 copies of my paperbacks in Amazon using Amazon ISBNs from when I didn't know any better. And then I have Ingramspark versions of those same books with my own ISBNs in the same trim size. And so you can do that. Okay? Yes?
So, let's say you publish the first in series, but you now realize that you've botched the launch, you didn't have any ARC readers, you started off with 0 reviews and all that, and you're getting ready to publish the second book in series. How do you recover from a poor launch? Like, what are some tips and strategies for that?
Boy, that's a little almost outside the scope of what I would talk about here, but I can just say that every book is a fresh start, even another book in a series. So your first book in a series may not have had the most spectacular launch because you botched something, you didn't have your ARC readers lined up. You can still get ARC readers lined up for book 2. Give them both book 1 and book 2, and have them so they can get caught up, and then have them, be ready for the launch of book 2 to get the reviews out there and stuff like that. So there's, every book is another opportunity. That's the beauty of what we do. I mean, every book is a fresh frontier for your readers. And a lot of series, you talk to some of the bigger authors out there, they'll tell you a lot of their series don't take off till book 3 or 4 or 5 came along. So sometimes you just have to wait until it gets a little bit of traction. That's the advantage of having multiple books out. And one thing I can tell you is the best thing to do when you finish book 1 is to start book 2. Nothing sells your last book like your next book. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you have one book, you have 1 page in the Amazon store. If you have 2 books, you have twice as many pages in the Amazon store. And if it's part of a series, they're linked together. They're linked to each other. If you have an author page, they're all linked to each other. So you start getting that exponential juice that feeds in to getting a bigger presence. There's more of a chance there's twice as much chance somebody will land on your page if you have 2 books compared to 1 book. So get that next book out there. Yes? Or Ira, I'll let you go.
I have a question from Diane Zug-Martin on Facebook.
Hi,
She
Diane.
asks, question, much of the talk through the conference has been about ebooks, but could you discuss the process behind print on demand for paperbacks and hardbacks?
So print on demand is the best thing since sliced bread from an author standpoint, I think. Before print on demand came along, you had to buy like a 5,000 book print run of your book. You had to front the money for that. Now, making a paperback book costs about $4 or $5 a book, so do the math. You'd have to put that money out there to get 5,000 copies and have the space in your garage, living room, basement, fill in the blank here, to store them while you sold them. Print on demand, you create a book, you upload the formatting, it's in the store, somebody orders it, and the printers and the store says, great, it'll be to you in 2 weeks. And it goes to the print on demand service and they print the book per order. Now that's not exactly true. Amazon will, if the book shows a little traction, Amazon will print ahead and have 3 or 4 copies on hand, or 10 copies, or 20 copies, whatever their algorithm tells them to have. And so that is something that print on demand will do. But generally it's print as ordered. And that can be done through a couple of places. Amazon does it, Ingramspark does it, and makes those available at bookstores and libraries. Barnes & Noble has print-on-demand services. So you can upload the same formatted file to all of them. The only thing that might change is you might need to tweak the cover a little bit because everybody's a little different in how they trim the covers. And so they might make you change your cover by 0.15 inches. Something like that, make it a little larger in one dimension or another. So, but that's print on demand, Diane. Thanks for your question. And send in more questions, folks. I keep forgetting you all are out there too, so I'll just wave to you. Yes?
I have a follow-up to that. So we've all seen that sometimes the print on demand, that people that get pages falling out, that type of deal. As new authors, what should we do if people come to us and say, I ordered your book and it came in falling apart or the cover's damaged?
You need to tell them to return it to the place they bought it, just like you do with any other store. It's not they didn't order it from you, and there's nothing you can do about it other than send an author complaint in that, hey, the print on demand, I'm getting complaints from my readers. It'll hold more juice for most places out there if you have, if they have the complaint from the actual customer. So it's unfortunate, and I've heard those. I've never had a problem with my print on demand books.
Knock on wood.
That's close.
But I've heard about it happening, and I have good friends that have had it happen, and so I know it happens. I don't believe it's a myth or anything. I think it's real. So I would just tell them to send it back to the thing, get satisfaction, get one that's right, and get their money back if they don't want to get one that's right.
So I'm hoping you can help me understand the minutia of this. Put the paperback up for some exorbitant price to get the reviews. Is it so expensive because it's not done yet? Is it so expensive?
Yeah, and that's why I don't do it that way. I just put paperback up because it's ready.
Okay.
But some people will put up a file that's like an unedited version of their book, and they don't want it to get out there because it's not quite done yet.
Okay.
Yep. So they put up an unedited version, and they put it at a high price because they don't want it to buy not.
Okay.
I'm just trying to stay lucky. So they put it up there because they don't want somebody to buy it by accident and get the unedited version of the book. But you do have to put up a file up there. And so in order to do that, you have to have that file, a file of some sort.
That makes sense.
So.
We have another online question. This one's from Meg McDonald. She asks, following up with the botched launch question, should you unpublish and start again, or just leave book 1 up and keep going?
Keep going. Okay, so great question. There are reasons and methods for restarting and republishing a book. I would check, I think Chris Fox wrote a book about re-release strategies. I forget the exact name of it.
Relaunch your novel.
Yeah, relaunch your novel.
Relaunch, yeah, it's a relaunch book. So there are different ways to relaunch. One of them is you take the book down completely, put a new cover on it, and relaunch the book. And that always makes me nervous, but Chris talks about why to do that and what the reasoning would be behind it and how that process works. It's a good book. He has several books that talk about publishing things I highly recommend. I've read them all. But Chris's book talks about the reasonings for doing relaunches. I would not, just because of a botched launch, pull a book down. I might pull a book down if I inadvertently put in content that was offensive to some group of people, and just because I'm a stupid white male, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I try with my heart to not do that, but it's my greatest fear sometimes that I'm going to just say something, write something that I didn't understand. But that might be a reason why I depublish a book and fix and then republish again. But that would be one of the only reasons I would do it, just for a bad launch.
Going back to the list, and I apologize, some of the stuff's already covered. I'm just having some problems wrapping my head around it. So I'm brand new, incredible, invisible author who hasn't published anything yet, starting from ground zero. I want to build a list. Where do I actually start building that list if I have absolutely nothing?
So if you have a service like BookFunnel or Story Origin, they have promos going all the time. Some promos are limited to people with some history and some juice, where they know they're going to send it to a certain number of subscribers and get a certain response. However, there are promos open to brand new writers too, and that's where you'd have that short story or novella that you want to give away in a genre that's associated with your book, and you start building that list through those promos. Another way to do that is to reach out to authors in your genre and just ask, here's a selection of story that I've written. Would you be interested in helping share that with your readers? There are lots of different ways to approach that. Every genre is a little different, but there are a lot of authors out there willing to give somebody a hand up. I didn't get here by myself. I had a lot of help to get my books out there and in readers' hands. I had a lot of really helpful authors share their lists for me. And there are people out there who will do that. And it's just a question of getting to know them. It's not about asking them cold. You can also join, I mean, there's all kinds of ways. This is a whole different discussion. This is a marketing discussion, really. But you can join groups in the genre and become active in those groups and find out the rules for how you can promote in those groups before you do it. Don't just jump in cold and throw your book out there. But there are ways to become active parts of groups and forums, and so there's lots of different ways to get your book and start building that list. But that's just a few of them. In the back?
Yeah, regarding the newsletter question, may I recommend Tammy Labreck?
Yeah.
And her book, Newsletter Ninja. Yeah, she starts from the very basic and she'll walk you through it.
Newsletter Ninja by Tammy Labreck, Labreck.
QUE, yeah.
And she just Book Funnel gives it away. Book Funnel.
And
she just
gives you
announced
a ebook copy of it.
Oh, okay.
she's coming out with a second newsletter
Newsletter
ninja
Ninja
that I
too.
think is specifically around lead magnets.
Okay.
So that might be, I don't know if it's out
She
yet.
so here's another thing. Tammy spoke at this conference in several panels. It's Tammi Labreck. Spell it. Come on. I'm sorry, Tammy.
I'll make sure she sees this video.
She's a speaker she's already spoken about this at the conference. Again, there are a lot of resources in the group that can help with these things. But there's lots of different ways to get your reader list started.
Mine's kind of an observation to follow up on the bad launch on the first one, and what you said, some series don't pick up the fourth, fifth book. And there were several discussions with other authors and observations, and I'm of an age back before ebooks. And a lot of people wouldn't pick up a series until they hit the third or fourth book because they didn't want it pulled out of the rug of them. A lot of your super fans, a lot of your whale readers, they may be of an older age from that time, and they're not gonna, they might buy your first book and put it to the side, but they might not really get into it until you've got several out there. So just because the first one didn't always go well, doesn't mean it's not gonna take off like a steamboat once you have several out there from the pick from. It's just a little psychology observation.
Exactly, and that's very true. Thank you for sharing that. There are a lot of writers out there that write that first book with every intention of writing a series and never go any farther. And they leave a lot of readers hanging. And so those readers are, burnt a little bit and don't want to try a brand new author. Now, somebody's an established author who's written a series already, they'll take a chance on their next first in a series. But for a brand new author, they might not read that first book until you've proven that you can put more than one book out. That's a great point. Ira.
We have another online question. This one's from Lana Billman.
Hi, Lana.
She asks, other than the obvious reasons, teacher, erotica, horrors, children's genres, privacy, etc. So other than those obvious reasons, when and why should you use a pen name instead of the same name throughout? I've heard it's harder to manage and heard it's easier for tracking.
Yes, so pen names. How many people here have heard somebody tell you don't write in multiple genres?
No.
You all don't have this problem, but authors in here, how many of you write in multiple genres? The biggest reason to have a pen name is to just separate the genres from an Amazon standpoint and from other search engine standpoints. Amazon's trying to figure out who your perfect reader is. And if they can figure out who your perfect reader is, they'll show your book to all the perfect readers for your book because they want to sell your book. They don't make any money if your book just sits on their store. So they want to know who your perfect reader is. If you write multiple genres under the same name, that muddies the water a little bit for who your perfect reader is. If you release your book and tell your whole family, and then wonder why your also box includes gardening for grandmothers, it's because grandma bought your book because you're her cute baby and she wants to help support you. Unfortunately, her gardening habit is going to leach into your story. So the short answer is, if you have multiple genres, it can be recommended that you have multiple pen names. It is, I think, a huge hassle to manage a pen name. Think about having two different versions of yourself online. and maintaining it, and entertaining the readers, and submitting comments back, commenting back on things. Oh, I want to write in a third genre. Okay, I'm going to have a third pen name. Now there's 3 of me out there. So I choose to just write under one genre, or under one pen name, and then have everybody just kind of find my stuff and hope that there's a reader out there who likes a little bit of everything I write. But that's the reason. The other obvious reason is you're a school teacher and you don't want the parents to find out you're writing steamy erotica. That might hurt the next parent-teacher conference you have. So that's why the obvious reason for some things is to have a pen name. Having one pen name is pretty easy because it's just one presence to maintain. But a lot of people will have more than one pen name, and then the reason for that is to have different genres and kind of separate the streams and keep it more pure in the Amazon algorithm sense. Good question, Lana. Thank you.
Ingramspark is still kind of a new concept to me. Could you just discuss a little bit kind of what it is, how it differs from Amazon, but I want to be on both?
Ingramspark is a print-on-demand service that supplies hardcover and paperback books to all of the independent bookstores out there, booksellers like Barnes & Noble as well, the big booksellers, the small booksellers, libraries buy from Ingramspark. Think about it, you're a small bookstore owner, would you give your money to Amazon to buy a couple of books to put on your shelf? That's why they buy from Ingramspark. So they don't want to give that money to Amazon because Amazon's putting them out of business, or trying to. So
it could be on both.
it can be on both, absolutely. So you can have, and I do have my books on Amazon in paperback with an Amazon ISBN. And then I've bought ISBNs for the same formatted book and put it up on Ingramspark under my publishing name in that ISBN and have them put it out, and then that makes it available to bookstores. Ingramspark has some things that you should understand about the terms of service. They will ask you if you want to accept returns like a regular book publisher does. And if you don't accept returns, if you do accept returns, you have to be willing to take some of the money, give the money back. In other words, they sell to a bookstore, they give you the royalty. 6 months later, the bookstore hasn't sold your book, and you say you take returns, the bookstore sends the book back, and you end up having to owe Ingramspark the royalty they paid you back. So when my Ingramspark money just sits there, I don't touch it, and then it kind of filters out over time, and then so it goes into my bank account, but I don't pay any attention to it. I pretend it's not there, and I don't try to spend it because I know it could come back, right? And I might have to pay it back at some point. So, but it's a great way to supply readers. It's a great way to, if you're doing a signing event and you want to drop ship something, you're going to go to Dallas or something.
Is there a time limit they can return?
What is it?
Is there a time limit on returns?
Is there time?
Time limit on returns?
I think it's 1 year, but they can do it any time within that time frame. And I have to read the terms of service, but it's on Ingram's terms of service, and you can see how to set that. The other thing is make sure you're setting the pricing in Ingramspark so that you're actually making a profit, because they will let you sell your book for a loss. And then you'll owe them money when they sell your book, which is not fun. So, let's go here first.
So for Ingramspark versus Amazon, so like if I'm trying to get my book into, for example, school libraries.
Ingramspark.
Okay. And then is there a way there that I can just do the libraries and not necessarily the bookstores, or just the bookstores and not necessarily the libraries? Or is
No,
it just,
not to my knowledge.
it's whoever wants
to. Available.
Okay.
So, and so you'd have to, it'll just be available to libraries. Or not, there's no way to make it just available to one source or another source. It's just on Ingramspark's store, wholesale store.
Wholesale.
And any wholesaler can get
But
it.
you can promote just to libraries.
Yeah, you can choose to promote it to wherever you want and tell them here's how you get it.
Okay.
And say it's in the Ingramspark catalog, and then they can go look it up there. So there's a way to fudge, like you said, promote it to one source or another source. Bookstores will find your book automatically, but you can go to your local bookstore and say, hey, I'm in the Ingramspark catalog and I'm a local author, I'll come to a book signing, and they'll buy 10 books to put on the shelf.
That
draft to digital, you can choose where you want it to be distributed.
Okay.
So if you want it to be one or the other, then that is a distributor that you can use.
So she said draft to digital has the option in the print version to where you distribute to, as far as where the print version is available for. So that's good to know. Thank you. Okay.
You brought up terms of service, and this is a paralegal in me. While you're publishing in your newbie, you might do your own covers, and you're downloading the stock photos that are free, and you're allowed to use them for print, but not for merchandise. Save those things the minute you download anything, and when you go on a site and you join up like Ingramspark, save those terms of service when you did it. And then, you'll get a notice if they change those. You download them again, you have a copy somewhere, have a PDF, and the date of when you did it, and keep track of that stuff. You never know when you're gonna need it. But particularly for if you're downloading the stock photos, you need the terms of service of when you did it.
And this is the license that allows you to use it. When you go to a stock photo place, that's a great point. When you go to a stock photo place if you're making your own covers, or using them for any purpose, you should understand how that use is applied, because it's not just you can use it forever for everything. You need to know what those terms are, and you can download those licenses as you download each photo, and it's important to understand what the license is for the site you're working with, so that's really important. All right.
We have a question from Sarah Morris Schultz. She says this may be too specific to ask to the group, but she's going to try anyway. The question is, I have Story Origin, but hear more about BookFunnel. Is there an advantage to using BookFunnel and Story Origin, or should I just stick with the one that I already have? If you have
Hi, Sarah,
experience.
great question. First, the reason you hear about BookFunnel is because Damon buys us lunch.
And he's good at karaoke.
That's a joke, but it's kind of true. Damon's a great guy. Damon's an author too, and I actually was around at a conference when Damon got the idea for BookFunnel and kind of first announced it in its most crude, awful form as a way, hey, I found a way that's better than you just emailing copies of your books and then giving them instructions on how to put it on their Kindle. And he came up with a way to do that automatically and he'd provide the service and the help rather than me. So Damon did that. Damon is famous for if he shows up at the table you're sitting at in a restaurant and says, hey, I'm Damon from BookFunnel, can I sit down? Say yes. Because Damon is famous for picking up the check. And that's probably why we talk about BookFunnel. He was also the first one to do it. Story Origin came along later, so it's just kind of like, calling a box of tissues Kleenex. So use Story Origin. Story Origin's just as good in many ways, and so I think, if you have it and you're comfortable with it, that's an either-or situation. Next. Yes?
So, back to Ingramspark and getting into bookstores, how do you go from uploading your book to Ingramspark to getting Barnes & Noble to order it into their store?
Well, you put it in. So the question is, how do you go from uploading your book to Ingramspark to getting your local Barnes & Noble to download it? You upload it to Ingramspark and make sure it's live in their store. So it goes through the whole process and you'll get back a notification like a couple days later that it's been approved. Okay? Once it's approved, it's in their catalog. Then you can go to your local Barnes & Noble and ask if they do local author book signings and tell them your book, give them your book title and your author name and that it's in the Ingramspark catalog. It's really that simple. And they'll order it. Just be aware, I did a book signing at a Barnes & Noble that's near me for a charity event for a local school. And we didn't sell any copies of my books, and they bought 25 copies of my book. And I sat there, and it was great. I sat there, and I was happy to support the school, but we didn't sell any books. And at the end of the day, they sent back, like 4 months later, I saw all the books show up in my Ingramspark thing as returns.
Right.
So again, it's that, be aware that I got paid, and then I had to send it all back. So.
It sounds like for Ingramspark, you should have a separate bank account.
I mean, if not a separate bank account, at least, put it in, pull that stuff out and throw it in a savings account, or just mentally mark it that I'm not going to spend that $15 or whatever it is, because I might have to send it back to them. And you don't send it back to them, they actually send you an invoice and you pay it with a credit card number. But at least accounting for it in your mind. My wife is probably going, this is why our books are so screwed. So that, follow your own best accounting practices, which are not mine.
When it comes to the book signings and stuff, can you bring your own books to, like, say, Barnes & Noble?
No to Barnes & Noble, because they want to control the purchases. They want it to go through their cash register.
Sure.
So that's, and I would say that's probably true for most bookstores. But if you're doing an author signing, you bring your own to, say, for instance, a convention like this, where they're having an author signing. You bring your own books to those events where you'd order, and you can order your books print on demand from Ingramspark or from Amazon. They both, I found Amazon to be slightly cheaper and easier in the shipping sense. They're just a little cheaper to get your books from Amazon, print on demand, than Ingramspark, but it's really the difference of like $1 per book. And so that can add up over time, but if you don't want to support Amazon's engine, you can certainly get it from Ingramspark, but only slightly more. Okay, next.
Have you noticed or heard any quality differences between like Ingramsparks or KDP?
I've heard, so the question is, have I heard of any quality differences between print on demand? I've ordered from both, and I can't tell the difference, but I am horrible at telling the difference between things like that. I'm not looking at my wife right now, and I'm telling you right now, I don't know what she's wearing. I'm just horrible at noticing those kind of things. But I have heard people say that like the color is a little more faded in one version than another version, and I don't even remember what it was. I've ordered from both, and I put the books up next to each other, and it's the same cover, and it's the same color paper, and so I think your mileage may vary. I guess is the answer to that. Any more? Getting down the wire here. Ira, another online.
We have another online question. This one's from Amy Marie. She asks, if we don't care about seeing our books in libraries, etc., is there a reason to still use Ingramspark? Or better to go with Amazon for physical books? And then Meg McDonald kind of followed that up with the question of, are they buying on Amazon? She brought up, maybe it depends on where they're buying, if your readers are buying on Amazon, and maybe how that factors into choosing where to publish your paperbacks.
Okay, so great points, Amy and Meg. Thank you. The question, you heard Ira's question. I think you can sell in both places, so why not? I mean, my belief is get your book in front of as many people where they want to buy it, how they want to buy it. That's my personal philosophy on that. So, and you do not violate your KU terms of service by selling your paperbacks somewhere other than or in addition to Amazon. It's only ebooks that are restricted by the exclusivity arrangement with Kindle Unlimited. You can sell every other format anywhere you want based upon the terms of service for your format. So
Ingram just has an upload fee versus KU.
They do have an uploading fee if you're a member of this conference group and you're getting your emails from Craig. That every month there's a new code to waive that upload fee in its entirety for up to 5 books in that month.
Just don't share it.
Just do not share it, or we'll lose it forever. Somebody was sharing it, and Ingram pulled it, and Ingram broke the code and wouldn't let us have one for like 6 months. And Craig went and asked nicely, and then came up with this system of every month there's a new code. And he only sends it out to the email list for this conference. It doesn't even go on the conference group on Facebook because people will share it. So if you get the emails from Craig, you can get the code, and that'll be up to 5 books per month, which honestly, unless you're doing a back catalog, you probably won't need more than 5 uploads per month. So next, yes.
So I was wondering about the color cover thing. I found this out at least with doing the yoga for my kids' school. Do you need to make sure to have it in CMYK or that type of deal? Does that?
I don't. I can't answer that because that's a design question. And as I've already stated, I don't understand how color works.
CMYK is the ink colors that are...
Right. I know it has to do with how the colors are formatted in the file. and I'm not sure, that's something you want to talk to with your cover designer. A good cover designer should know the answer to that. If you're doing it yourself, a nice cover designer will answer the question for you. And it is also in the upload terms for like what kind of file formats they require on each site. So it'll tell you what they prefer, whether it's CMYK, RGB, whatever format they have.
Down and dirty about that is you can display much more color with light on a monitor, which is what RGB does.
Okay.
CMYK is what print does, and when you put it on paper, it absorbs a certain amount, and so certain colors are not printable because the colors will not match together the same way they will with light.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff online that you can find to do that and clarify. But no, when you're working on websites and things like that, you have a much broader spectrum of color than when you work in print.
Okay, thank you. That's great help. Thank you very much. Next.
Quick question about uploading the Kindle Unlimited. Is there a limit? Like, say you upload a book to Unlimited. As long as it's in Unlimited, you can't upload that ebook anywhere else, or is there a
Just the ebook.
Right.
Okay, so so when you upload to KDP, you get a selection at some point. Do you want this book to be included in Kindle Unlimited? You can check the box, you can uncheck the box. It's good for 90 days. It automatically renews, but you can go in there at any time and uncheck the box, and at the next 90-day period, it'll come out of Kindle Unlimited, and then you can publish it somewhere else. But until that point, the ebook must remain in Kindle Unlimited only. And for those of you who don't know what Kindle Unlimited is, treat the Amazon store and the Kindle Unlimited store as two different stores. They're different readers. So there are people who buy books and don't subscribe to Kindle Unlimited. And there are people who are in Kindle Unlimited who never buy books because they use the subscription service for their reading. I treat them as two different stores and two different types of buyers. So the reason people like Kindle Unlimited as authors is because they're getting two stores for one, essentially, two groups of readers for one in the Amazon store. And so they can get more bang for their buck in some situations, or a lot of situations. Again, you can find readers on the other platforms. And there are authors who are killing it on Apple and Nook and all the other stores. So it really is your own, but you're also having to market two different marketplaces. So it takes a little more work and a little more savvy to understand that each type is different. Does that answer your question?
I got a question about art and graphics. I need some maps and cover art done, and let's say that someone in my grandson's high school is a fantastic artist and can draw me and wants to draw maps and do some cover art. And if I pay him a small fee, do I then own that? Does anybody know?
So good question, and that's a question on how you ordered it from them and how you're paying them and the arrangement you made with them. And I would say if you're ordering something like that, you should have a contract that specifically says whether it's a work for hire, which a work for hire is you hire them to make your map, and that map becomes yours when they give it to you and you pay them. It transfers, the copyright transfers to you, and you own that map. It's no longer their artwork. It is most often that you'll get a license for artwork for a specific use, purpose, and time frame. And that artist and you will come to terms for that licensing fee. And honestly, that's the way I would do it if I were an artist, and it's the way I do it as an author. I license the different formats of my book to different things and different purposes, whether it's translations, audiobooks, audio dramatizations, which are different than audiobooks. All those things are different formats. So it really depends on how you do it. If you're dealing with some high school kid who does great maths, I would treat them right and get a contract for them of some sort just to protect you and them. And that there are ways to look that up online. You don't necessarily need to get an intellectual property attorney. There are probably some basic contracts out there that are work for hire contracts or licensing contracts. But you should make sure you both understand what it's for and where it's going and what it's going to be used for.
Yeah, and make sure that that person can enter into a contract. If they're in high school, they don't.
Yeah, they're a minor.
Obviously, if they're in high school, you'd have to get their parents to sign a contract and make sure that kind of stuff. I wouldn't use a high school artist, no matter how talented they are. I mean, I just think that opens a whole can of worms because it's different in every state, probably in some ways too. Who can sign a contract or who can enter into that kind of an agreement.
So I do a lot of digital stuff myself, and I know if we ever use someone else, I would ask for a PNG and an SVG format. Are you familiar with any other things that you should always have of artwork so that later you can make changes and do stuff?
It depends on what I get. So, and this is various things. You may be able to find a cover artist out there that will let you purchase for an additional fee to cut their Photoshop file just so you can do some basic manipulation down the road for like marketing purposes. That they may or may not, some do allow you to do that. That just really, that's the big thing I get. Because then I can take the writing away and just use the background, or take the foreground figures out and just have the background there for some marketing, imaging, or things like that. That's the only thing I can think of aside from your basic PDF, JPEG, PNG, whatever file format that you want what you need it for.
And do you always get one that already has the typography removed as well, or do you just not worry about it?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on who the cover designer is I'm dealing with. Some cover designers include that in their packages, where they'll give you the background free, like the paperback version with the full background without any typography on it. So you have this like cool cityscape or landscape or something that you can put, use as a background on your computer to inspire you to write more or something. I mean, every cover designer has different things they provide. So it really is what is their package offering for you, and some of them may offer additional things for add-on purchasing purposes. Get down to the wire here, folks, so final couple of questions, if anyone has one. Yes? No? Okay. Are we done? Yes, one more.
Sorry.
That's all right.
You mentioned Kindle Unlimited it sounds like every book kind of starts there, but that's not the only format that people read ebooks in. So how do you go to like Apple? How does that work?
So Kindle Unlimited is a subscription service inside Amazon.
Yeah.
So you're uploading the same version of the file to Amazon that the people will download to purchase as they do for Kindle Unlimited, and they read it on their Kindle, but it's through the subscription service.
Yeah.
So that's but if you want to have it on other stores, you can't be in the Kindle Unlimited subscription service. So that's the thing to keep in mind. If you want to be on Apple for ebooks, if you want to be on Apple, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, you need to have your book out of KU.
Is KU still 90 days at a time?
90 days at a time.
Yeah.
KU is 90 days at a time. So you're not locked in forever. It's not a final decision. It's a 90-day exclusivity agreement with Amazon that you're only going to have that ebook available on Amazon's store. And in exchange for that, they make it available to their KU readers.
So is there a way to put your book up on Kindle, but not Kindle Unlimited?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a spot on the dashboard as you're going through uploading your book. It'll reach a point where a pop-up or a screen, a part of the entry is, do you want this book available in Kindle Unlimited? And it's a checkbox. And if you say yes, then and you hit publish, then for 90 days from that publish date, you're in the Kindle Unlimited agreement with Amazon.
Are you still paid per page read, or?
You're paid per page read in Kindle Unlimited, but you're paid per download in the Amazon store itself. So someone can buy your book. Let's say your book is $4.99, and it's also in Kindle Unlimited. Somebody comes along that's not in Kindle Unlimited, they'll pay $4.99 for your book, and you'll get 70% of that $4.99, which is a number which I cannot do math in my head.
Yeah, it's like 3 something.
349
yeah.
something, right in there. Yeah, 350-ish. So,
Depends on the store.
they also, depending on how many pages your book is, and it's not the actual pages, it's Kindle's magical imaginary pages number that they come up with, which is higher than your actual pages, so it's okay. But they look at your book and they figure out about, on average, how many pages it is on a Kindle. And they pay you per page read. And that'll be whatever that number is for that month, determined after the fact. So about halfway through the next month, they'll look at last month's numbers of authors that had page reads. They'll look at their fund that they have available for Kindle Unlimited, and they'll divide the fund by the number of author page reads. And that'll be the number that you get paid per page. I usually figure on about 0.4 cents a page. So it's 0.0042. Well, it's 4.2, it's 4.5, it's, you know, it's 0.004-ish. Because it changes every month. You never know. I mean, Craig actually posts it in the 20Books to 50K group when it comes out. It comes out on the 15th of every month, about the previous month. Amazon will, and if you're published, they'll send you an email that'll say the amount in the Kindle pool this year, this month, for last month is $12.5 million. And then you have to go and do the math. If we don't do the math, Craig does the math for you and posts it in the group every month on the 15th, and tells you how much it is. And then I think right now it goes up and down. But I lowball it and say 0.4 cents per page. And then that kind of, if I lowball it, then I'm happy when it's 0.43 cents per page. So we are right down to the wire here. Any more online questions? One more question back here.
Yeah, so I buy a lot of stuff from Amazon, and I really don't, I mean, new author, don't have to web page anything. I'm getting ready to set all that up. And my book, I'm hoping, ready to upload. I'm gonna pre-order it. Do I just set up a different profile? I don't want my retail profile to cross with my author profile.
Your buyer profile on Amazon, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be different.
It'll be different. I mean, it might have the same. It might have the same login.
Yeah, you'll use the same login, but they won't
An
connect.
Amazon account login, but I don't think it's a problem if your Prime account, you know, that you buy your groceries from or whatever is the same, is linked somehow to your author account. I don't think that's a problem.
No.
I don't want my emails though to even go to my, because I have a shop.
So then set up a separate account. Get yourself like Jamie Davis author at gmail.com.
Right.
And then use that to create a new account through Kdp. And then you'll have a different Amazon account and a different Kdp account. That Kdp login can also be in a separate Amazon login.
Right.
So you can use that login for your affiliate account if you're going to ever have affiliate payments coming to you. And you can use that for your Author Central account, things like that. If you're a new author and you don't have a website yet, just because you mentioned that you're getting your author website set up, there is somebody in the vendor area, Site Arcade. There's another Mod Farm Designs that does author websites. Site Arcade is specifically for brand new authors, and they actually have a table right inside the door in the author signing thing today. So if you haven't talked to them already, go talk to the guys at Site Arcade. They have basically, it's just a kind of quick and easy website that's perfect for people with just a few books.
Can I ask just an add-on to that?
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna be writing in multiple genres. One of them, I'm only doing 3 books in historical fiction. It's a hard sell, and I understand that. I'm pretty sure everything else I'm gonna be writing in is either fantasy, historical fantasy, science fiction, you know, that kind of stuff. Can I have a website that has it all? I mean, I know there's different,
Sure. I mean you can. You may not want to. I mean, if it's going to be its own standalone thing, you're never going to write that again. You might. I don't know necessarily where I'm the best person to talk to give you advice on this, but you could have a website that's just for that series, and then have a separate website for all your other stuff. If you think that it's so differently separate that you want to keep them separated from each other. I think it's more important. It's more important for you in that situation. Maybe you're an example of why you should have a pen name for the small series
Right, I
and
have
a
a
different
pen
name
name
for
for the small series.
That would be. It's more important for that to get the Amazon algorithm working in the right direction for you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a pen
I'm not necessarily the best person to ask about how the web aspect of that search engine optimization and stuff would work, and that's what you're really asking about.
You could probably set it up as a subdomain.
One last.
Can you speak to vetting someone who's gonna help you before giving out your KDP password? Like, what would you do? Because I've heard people say, like, you know, if somebody has your KDP password, if you have somebody helping you with something, that, you know, that's your livelihood and they can destroy it.
There are two people in the universe that have access to my KDP password. My wife and my daughter-in-law, who is my assistant. If she wasn't married into the family, I probably wouldn't give her my KDP password. But I think that's something you need to, like, if you have a legal agreement with them and they've worked with other authors and, you know, they've come vetted, and I think you have to make that decision individually yourself. But I would not. There's not so much that can be done yourself in that situation. Sean, do you have something to add?
I was just going to say, like, you've never had to give anybody my password, I immediately go in an hour later and change my password.
If you need somebody to do a lot of work for you and change, like you want somebody to go in and change all your keywords for a series, and that's going to take, you know, a couple of hours, and you can be writing, and you have somebody who can do that. Just go into the dashboard, create a password that's unique for that person, and when they call you back and say they're done, change the password back or change it to a new whatever. Yeah, that's a great idea, Sean. All right, folks, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you for something else in the round. So good.